This is GrantTalk, hosted by Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch and author of The Queen of Grants.
Hi, I'm Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch.com and the author of The Queen of Grants, From Teacher to Grant Writer to CEO. And I am your host today on GrantTalk. And I'm so excited to be here with two wonderful, beautiful young ladies who are the project officers for CLIR, spelled CLIR, which represents the Council on Library and Information Resources. And they give grants. And we're going to hear from them today. I believe there's one that's open right now and one that's coming out in January 2025, right? And we don't know where we're publishing this exactly, so hopefully they'll both be available at that time. I'm speaking today with Alyson and Sharon Burney from CLIR, CLIR, which represents the Council on Library and Information Resources. They have grants available, and we want to hear from them as funding sources. It's very, very important as grant writers to understand what happens to our grant after we submit it and how we should prepare the grant, how we should be grant ready. And that's what we're going to find out today because they have very specific kind of grants. So welcome, Sharon. Welcome, Alyson. And Sharon, can you start and tell us, how did you get involved? And Alyson, jump in, please, as well. Go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, I joined CLIR in 2019 after spending over 20 years working in academia at the University of Florida in the African American Studies program. And I saw this opportunity was brought up to me from one of our former CLIR postdocs who said, Sharon, this job, if you were a job, this would be you. And so I looked at the call at that time was for a program assistant, and it was me. So I applied, and we were both on the same page, and I was fortunate, and CLIR hired me, and I've been with them for right around 5 years now. Really enjoy it. Brought me back home to libraries, which was my first college work-study job as a student. Working the stacks in the libraries, and combines the best of both worlds where you can work with libraries, what we call the GLAMs, galleries, libraries, archives, and museum professionals in a variety of ways. And primarily I'm on the grants team as a program officer, and we help with the 2 re-granting programs that we have that is generously funded by the Mellon Foundation.
Let's get to that in a minute. Alyson, tell us how you got involved.
Similar to Sharon, I came from an academic background. I also had my first work-study job in the library. I was an undergrad at Carnegie Mellon and working in the Hunt Library there. I later became a librarian, starting in the public system, but then moving into the academic arena at Duquesne University. And I was later the head of public services at a graduate theological seminary here in Pittsburgh. So I was kind of ready to shift from working in a library to working more broadly with libraries, which is why I kind of started looking in this direction. I was familiar with CLIR primarily through the Recordings at Risk program. I knew some theological librarians that had used the program to digitize some cassette collections that they had. So that's kind of how it first came across my awareness. And I was interested in the ability to start working with grants to these institutions because I had spent so much time in them and I had a pretty good sense of how much need there was. So to be able to be on the other side and meet some of that need was really intriguing to me.
And, GrantWatch has library licenses.
Oh, so for the databases.
Right. So we have libraries that purchase a number of simultaneous users, and we give them a special link. So if you're in the library and you have access to their Wi-Fi, you can log on to GrantWatch, use it as a resource, decide that, hey, my nonprofit should purchase this. And when they finish, somebody else can use it. Some libraries buy 20, some 50, some 5. It depends what's the need of the library. So we do that. And I love when we speak about libraries because if you've listened to any of the previous GrantTalk episodes. That's my favorite place. It's been that way since I was a young child, and I'm still visiting the library. And we just got the Queen of Grants ready to be purchased from, through libraries. So,
nice.
yeah, we started out on Amazon and now it's all ready, and they just have to look it up and they can purchase it. So that's really exciting as well. So you have grants right now, right? And I was listening to some webinars all the way back from 2019, which is, Sharon, when you said you started, and they're talking about digitizing and basically archiving important documents. And I see the need even more so than in 2019.
That's
so
right.
you're creating the reference, the primary source reference for eternity, we hope, right?
Well, yeah, that's our hope. We also primarily focus on digitizing artifacts that have yet to be digitized. Some of those will include primary documents. And we have two very distinct programs that are somewhat similar, but they have very distinct differences. We understand the value of digitization with the onslaught of climate change and its threat to our collections that are housed internationally. This is a worldwide issue. And we also understand the importance of retaining culture and the human record of what has happened so that we can know where we need to go in the future. So, yes.
In Hurricane Sandy, I heard stories of where there were holy books on shelves inside a basement up 4 feet, and the water stopped right below it. But all those books would have been lost. And they were so lucky, and I think a lot of things were lost and have been lost through flooding, right?
Yes.
And problems like that.
Sometimes it's flooding, sometimes it's fire. I think there's one that sits home to Alyson, one of our projects that was funded. I think it was Apple Shop, correct?
Oh yeah, Apple Shop it's a large archive and performance space based around kind of folk culture in Tennessee and Appalachia. They had a catastrophic flood in 2020, and we granted them a Recordings at Risk grant last year. I know they're still seeking other funding because they had a full auditorium and 2 stories of archives that were completely flooded out. And this is something that we're seeing more and more. The fires in Maui destroyed some original primary source archives in Lahaina. The fires at the University of South Africa at Cape Town destroyed many of their archives. So as fires and floods kind of continue to be enhanced, as climate seems to be moving in this direction, it's definitely something that we're concerned with as we kind of push to preserve these materials.
Yeah, hurricanes in Puerto Rico. We have the Digitizing collections, our project from Puerto Rico, and in collaboration with the University of Florida and the hurricane
But
there.
it seems like we're funding afterwards. It's like closing the barn door after the horse was stolen, right?
Well, for those that we've managed to fund, I would say in Apple Shop, yes, they've had their crisis and now they're seeking funding after the fact. Ideally, we get funding to these places before they are in this state of crisis, and that is a component of something that we are valued in our programs is risk. So that's specifically in the name of Recordings at Risk, but it's something that's evaluated in both programs, and that can be a matter of risk from a material standpoint. These are very old materials, and we know they're at risk of complete loss, but it can also be a risk of an environmental or location standpoint, where you realize that this is an area that is about to go through conflict, or this is an area that is at higher climate risk. So we can kind of help to prioritize those projects.
So you have 2 grants, right? Okay, so the one that's currently available, what's that called?
It's called the Digitizing Hidden Collections, Amplifying Unheard Voices project. And that one is currently open until the initial application is open until October 30th. It's a two step application process. You do the initial shorter application. If you advance, then you go to a final application that will open up in the winter. Um, this one is a larger grant. Is up to $350,000, and the purpose of it is subject specific as opposed to our Recordings at Risk program. The subject of your materials that you nominate for digitization have to be or amplify underheard voices, marginalized communities, be it race, gender, sexualities, disabilities, religion, and the likes. And that change this is now will be our third cohort of the Digitizing Hidden Collections, Amplifying Underheard Voices program, and we're really excited about that. I think we took a deeper dive.
This one we have on GrantWatch right now.
Yes.
It's listed currently on GrantWatch.
Yeah.
And if people feel they have something that is at risk, right, or they're under recognized.
Yeah, so it's a subject-specific collection base. So the collections that they nominate to be digitized. So these are only for materials that have not yet been digitized. And that can be papers, it could be articles, it could be sometimes newspapers, sometimes it's pictures, sometimes it's art, sometimes it's artifacts. Sometimes it is also recordings or VHS. These are things that are at threat of not being digitized because of what we said earlier is the state of the nominated materials. Sometimes it's that you don't have the equipment necessary to digitize these in-house or to digitize through a vendor. And so these are issues that we address to help organizations who are at risk of losing these very important collections to get funding to help them digitize it.
How small of a grant could somebody request if they have a small amount of items to how large? What's been the range? Alyson?
So for the Digitizing Hidden Collections grant, that is our bigger grant. And the smallest award size in that grant is $50,000. That's in comparison to our Recordings at Risk grant. And the biggest award in that category is $50,000. So Recordings at Risk is geared towards sort of smaller institutions and projects to help build capacity. And that can be as small as $10,000. So that's kind of a good starting point if you are just getting into digitization and you have a smaller collection that you want to look at. So like if you have something little. Hidden collections scope is bigger, so the smallest there are $50,000. However, digitizing hidden collections is open as a collaborative grant. So we do have instances where several similar organizations will partner with one another. So they may have smaller individual collections, but it makes cohesive sense for them to come in as a bigger project and get into that $50,000 to $300,000 price range.
So let's say somebody found a book and it came all the way from biblical times. It found a book. There's one copy. It's never going to last much longer. Is that something that comes under your digitizing?
We do digitize those types of materials, but we're very unusual for us to do a single item like that, just because even with the best level of scanning, if you have a single book, it's probably actually not that expensive to digitize. If you can find someone to work with you or a vendor to utilize. There are a couple of instances where we have done very small collections like that, but it's been a case where it's a very specific material, and then the material has been used to build out like GIS systems or broader databases. But in the instance where you just had one item, you're probably going to want to look to pair with an institution or a similar type of historical organization. We've been working with a lot of smaller historical organizations more recently, and I think that's the kind of place where people with sort of individual or a handful of items that they realize are unique and rare, but maybe they themselves are not like an archivist or have the capacity to do the preservation. We're seeing a lot of that work done in concert with local historical and community-based historical organizations, I would say.
So what's your favorite grant that you funded? Your favorite project?
Oh, it's kind of difficult to pick just one.
Okay,
You're
I'll
also
give you
very-
two. I'll let each of you pick one. This will give people an idea of what you fund.
Yeah. There was a project from, I think it was University of California, and they did one during the prison pandemic, and it was where they took materials of communications between incarcerated people and their families and how they were able to communicate with their loved ones or were not be able to communicate with their loved ones during the COVID epidemic because visitations had been shut down. And so they did a bunch of prison calls and letters and conversations. And it was very community based too. And it was a collaborative project. And I think it was very instrumental. And I think they wanted to use that to help fund some legislature behind that. So that was one that stuck out to me right off the top of my head.
So that was very current.
Yes, that was a 2020 project, I think. Yeah, Hidden Collections 2020 project.
And Alyson, what's your favorite?
One that I'm really been learning a lot more about lately that's kind of caught my attention is a Recordings at Risk project we made to a organization that's local to me in Pittsburgh, the Mattress Factory. And it was a Digitizing Hidden Collections grant to digitize the archives and papers of Greer Langton. Greer Langton was a big New York artist and also one of the earliest famous trans artists. She was a trans woman. And the art that she is most famous for were these dolls that she built that kind of represented her or what she was striving to be. And she built this final great installation at the Mattress Factory. So the materials that her family had was donated to the Mattress Factory to be a companion piece to this installation that they have. And one of the things that's just been really interesting is that so many of the documents in the archives were communications between her and her family. And it was interesting to me because she was the daughter of a preacher. She was a preacher's kid. And the church's insurance banded together to pay for her transition surgery in the 80s. So kind of that story of those familial relationships, that story of this sort of relationship with faith and transition is something that I don't think is very present or accessible in our society. And I think there are a lot of people struggling in that way now who are going to those materials and seeing a pathway of communication for their families that they didn't have a model for before. So kind of just the really individual impacts of even the smaller projects can be super meaningful to those that didn't have this access. Like, even though the collections are there, you have to be local to them in many cases. So being able to grant people all over the ability to see that story seems to be really meaningful to them.
Now, both of your projects are really, they're digitizing things within my lifetime. Do you have the projects that you digitize that are way back in time that have been found?
Yeah, so there's no time frame limit on the things that are digitized. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of a project. Sometimes they're literature projects. Sometimes they are projects of, before, I'm trying to think of anything that was way before our lifetime. There's a lot of civil rights projects that are done. You've had some language ones done. Can you think of something off the top of your head that was done? early
The law library, the law LL, the law
L,
library microfilm,
I'm sort of.
that was a bunch of historical state legal records. I believe it was from all 50 states, but that was primarily material. They were paper or onion skin materials from the beginning of many of these states' records. So that from the 1800s, late 1700s. That's one of the older ones. Some of the older ones I think we have are primarily holdings of like universities or
We do have indigenous communities who definitely, we are always excited when we get to fund an indigenous project. We have one that amplified the oral histories of treaties in Canada, and that was from the Office of the Treaty Commission. And we were really excited to be able to expand the Hidden Collections AUV to Canada this year. And so that's opened up a lot of these indigenous projects that we really get excited about. So those are older projects that we have. Our if you go to our funded projects page, you will just see the expansive collection of projects that we did. One for the Japanese American Museum. They did a project on the Deaf Catholic Archives. So I mean, we get to have such an expansive collection, especially once we've moved and changed it to amplifying these underheard, marginalized communities. It just opened up a whole new arena for us.
So let me ask you, when a grant is, an application is presented to you, what are you looking for when your initial screening? What does that consist of?
It's a long process.
Okay.
It's a long process that goes from application to the review panel. What I want to say is that we use an independent review panel made up of experts in the different fields, experts from librarians to data specialists to archival specialists. We take great pride in our review panel. They're very knowledgeable. They're extremely intelligent and very experienced. And we love working with our review panelists because they have the professional experience that allows them to bring a personal touch to these conversations, because it's both of the programs are very competitive grants.
What's your connection to the Mellon Foundation?
The Mellon Foundation funds this program. This is a re-granting both of our recordings at risk and hidden collections are re-granting programs that are generously funded by the Mellon Foundation.
And does somebody from the Mellon Foundation sit on your board? No. So they re-granted to you, and now you have it. And once you fund an organization, what's your communication like along the way?
Well, we take a great pride in our communications and the work that we put into this. So the applicant would apply in the system. After they apply in the system, we do what we call the tech review, where we make sure that they have followed the rules of the application process, that there aren't things missing. Sometimes we allow those applicants to submit or rechange or upload something they may not have been able to, which is a short window. And then after they go through our tech review, then we start compiling the applications to present to our review panel. Our review panel will then meet. Sometimes in the case of hidden collections, there's 2 review panels. And sometimes it's just one for recordings at risk. The review panel will make its decisions. We will have the comments that they put for the applications. We will then send those comments back to the applicants. Then they will make a funding decision about who gets funded and who does not. We send every applicant a comments document so that they can, if they don't get funded, they can take those comments and reapply in the future.
That is so helpful to organizations to get something back, even if they decide they don't want to apply for your grant. If future grants, it's like a whole learning experience.
Exactly.
And that's really great that you do that.
Yes, we do to that.
From the time of application to the time of notification that you've been funded, how many months would you say that is?
It depends on the program, because Recordings at Risk is a single application phase. It's a smaller program, so we only do run review cycle. I would say We open that in January and we notify probably in June to early July. So it takes about 6 months.
So it's opened in January, but when is it actually due? When does it close?
It closes in April. So it'll be opened. It's usually open for about 3 months. Then it takes about 2 months for us to go through the technical review, the review panel, and then work through making the funding decisions. We announce to the awardees, and then once we have confirmed with all of them, we announce publicly and disperse payments.
And
Digitizing.
The grant that's available right now,
Digitizing.
Digitizing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm get very confused when there's two and they have, and that's why we have a grants calendar on GrantWatch so everybody can organize themselves. So the one that's available now that's closing at the end of October, that will be funded in 3 months or sooner?
That one takes longer because that one is our 2-phase. So we have an initial application. We invite people into the second application from the initial application. So the second application for this one that closes October 30th will open in February. That's the final application stage. It will close in May, and people will be notified in late July, early August. So that one takes about twice as long because it's a 2-stage process.
There is a process between the time that we notify applicants and then we make a public notification, and that usually another couple of months before we do the public.
And the applicant has to be quiet about it,
yes.
right? I've gotten some messages along the way from people that have been awarded grants, and because we send everybody a mug. If they win a grant, they get this.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
They just have to send us something that gives us proof. Wow. So we get something like, well, we won the grant. We're not allowed to make it public, and we have the coffee mug now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we invite them to speak on GrantTalk as well.
Cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so they get to tell us about their journey of applying for funds. So that's, part of our whole business structure. We have the book that lets people know how to write grants, and we're working on our second book right now, how to grow your nonprofit and how to grow your business. And when they get awarded, they get this. So we just keep it going. You subscribe to GrantWatch. There's so many more things that happen for you. So I need to speak to our viewers and our listeners right now and tell them that if you would like to hear from more funding sources, we need you to hit that subscribe button on the screen. It's also below, and write a comment, a helpful, meaningful comment. So somebody that's searching for something will find your comment, and subsequently they'll find actually this video, which is great. So I want to thank you, Alyson and Sharon. I just want to ask you if there's something that you feel that we did not include that our listeners and viewers should know about your grant.
I would like to say that one of the things we're most proud about regarding our hidden collections application process is for those that are invited to the final application. We created an application support webinar series that allows us to assist them in creating a very excellent proposal. So we bring on experts who come in and break down some of the more difficult parts of the application process, such as the rights, ethics, and reuse, or the budget and finance, or assessing your collections. And we bring these experts on who help them walk them through the process, provide them an opportunity to ask questions directly to our experts or to the grants team. And then we follow that up by placing those recordings, the transcripts, and the Q&A docs that happen during the session online as a resource to them. And we keep those up, and they're also on our YouTube channel. And so as you think about possibly applying for these programs, I would probably recommend you going and viewing some of those things for the past application process and the current cycle to help you build a stronger proposal.
And I would just encourage people to visit our website, www.clir.org. One of the things that we have open occasionally is we have an open form for reviewer interest. I think people that are interested in getting grants may not be aware of the fact that many grants are awarded through review panels, and there are sometimes the opportunity to volunteer or be paid a stipend to participate on those panels. And participating on those panels gets you in the room to see how those decisions are made, which can be crucial not just in competing for a single grant, but in competing for grants across the board.
I was a peer reviewer for the federal government.
Nice.
And
You learn so much.
yes, my grants were so much better after that. I really saw things that, you like, why didn't I try that? How come I don't grant like that? And you just get such great pointers that you can't get that anywhere else.
Yeah,
could
if
take
you
all
can
the
get on a
courses you
panel.
want. Yeah, all the courses you want, read all the books, and please read my book anyway. But that knowledge that you get from actually reading other people's grants is just insurmountable. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope to see you again and come back and let us know what you funded. We'll be very happy to hear about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Grant Talk, powered by GrantWatch. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this GrantWatch channel. Please consider subscribing to GrantWatch.com, and you can find the book, The Queen of Grants, by going to GrantWatch.com/book. Thank you again for spending your time with us.